there's a funny meme that came out, and it's so true because it's an anecdote that, domestic politics, all Ukrainians are, fighting with each other around. And then, that happened with Trump. And then all Ukrainians are in formation, ready to, you know,
Defend
ready to go.
Zelensky.
Yeah. The unity is absolutely incredible.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of On the Edge with Philip Ittner. When I'm not putting together the program, I usually spend my time researching potential topics or guests that might be of interest to you as an audience member. Or I am, of course, keeping abreast of events, touching base with people I know around the country, and trying to get Ukraine's messaging out as much as I can to various media organizations, some of which may have brought me to your attention. Additionally, I'm sometimes called to do, roundtable discussions or the like. And it was in one of these instances where I met our guest this week. Yaroslava Yarochenko was born in Kharkiv, but she left Ukraine using her talents as a ballet dancer primarily during a very dark period in this country's recent history, but for different reasons. She left during a time when everything that wasn't nailed down was sent east to the kleptocracy in the Kremlin, or even the labor of the people of this nation were stolen away from them. And that is why there was, in 2014, the Maidan uprising, which Slavi, as she likes to be called, watched from afar, the so-called Revolution of Dignity. Subsequently, nearly 3 years ago to the day, as we are going to publish this on the eve of that grim anniversary, Slavi watched on in horror as Russian troops launched a full-scale invasion of her country. Based in Los Angeles, she is very much involved in the diaspora community, a topic I really wanted to bring to your attention. And we do. But sadly, given the chaos of recent days in the last week with the newly inaugurated Trump administration, we have to discuss some of the headline news, which we do. But all of these things, I hope, will be of interest to you, that they will provide you with information that you can use, and I hope also that it will provide some sort of insight, again, into the nature of the people of this nation. So, Slavi, thank you so much for spending some time with us. That we made the show basically to talk kind of broad picture and like in-depth conversations. And we'll talk about what it's like to be a part of the Ukrainian diaspora in your story and all the rest of it. But unfortunately, we just can't avoid the madness of what's happening. We're filming this on your birthday, so happy birthday. Thursday, the 20th of February, a week that has been really tumultuous and I think marks a turning point in the conflict, and that is what happened in Riyadh and what has been happening in D.C., and frankly, the fact that Donald Trump has removed his mask and revealed to everybody that he, at least in some ways, is his fellow traveler with Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin. How's the last week been for you, watching all this as a Ukrainian in the United States?
It's unreal. I don't think anybody would ever imagine such things could happen, especially from an American president. I've been having pit in my stomach for a couple of days now, but I think this past day was when Trump lashed out on Zelensky. That was that was it for me. I flipped, because before I was very analytical, what's happening, I stayed calm when that happened. I jumped on the wagon of dooms and glooms and the FUs to Trump. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and look, again, I want to talk more than just the headlines, but maybe we can do it with this question. We can kind of pair the big picture with what's happening now. What's it like being surrounded by Americans when they find out you're a Ukrainian, and the conversations you have with people who they don't know Ukraine. It's a country far, far away, and there's a lot of propaganda that is out there. How's it been? Maybe this week, but longer term as well, being surrounded by people who don't know your country and why it is so important that we support it.
I'm fortunate enough to be in Los Angeles, which is a multicultural city. So for the main part, people are very, very open to Ukraine. They sort of know that there's a war going on. Do they know the details? What's happening exactly? No. But the reaction that I usually get from people in real life is sympathy for the most part, but also like, oh, that's very cool. I don't know if it's because the people are genuinely nice.
Well, that's very LA. That's very LA. Yeah. I think that might be specific to, as a Northern Californian, I always have to kind of tut when it comes to LA, even though secretly I like the place. But it's got some characteristics. Then that's cool. Is a pretty that's very LA.
Or hella cool.
How's it? Yeah, hella cool. But also, you've got guys in the Central Valley. You've got guys over in Orange County and stuff who are they're very MAGA. Have you run into the MAGA movement, which is now, because follow the leader, it's going to be Zelensky as a dictator. Do you run into those guys as well in real life?
I wouldn't say I ran into them. I walked into them. There was one of the first presidential debates. It was like Nikki Haley was still in, and it was here in California, in Los Angeles, and we went to it. The Ukrainian Diaspora went to it, and of course, MAGA was there. They were vicious, basically. We had to leave. Ukrainians had to leave early. They were screaming in our faces. If we stayed any longer, somebody would have gotten hurt. So, but that was a debate.
Were you carrying like flags or things that were identified yourself as Ukrainian?
Yeah, we were just what you would wear to a rally, maybe a blue sweater. It wasn't anything in your face, but
Trezub, the trident or something, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we were easily identifiable.
And they greeted you with slurs and attacks, and what kind of stuff would they say?
Nazis, that was a big one.
Oh, the Nazi narrative thing.
No.
Did you get any of the give us our money back?
No, not at that time. We didn't, but
I think if you go to a rally today, you'll probably hear that.
Yeah, for sure. But they were getting up into our faces. So it was the most brutal experience probably that I've had with MAGA run-in. But yeah.
Well, the Russians, the Muscovites are very good at this. The Muscovites are very, very good at this. And they have look, it's they've even infiltrated into the Oval Office now. Their lies and their disinformation campaigns, and to say that is not actually an attack on our body politic, that disinformation campaign doesn't have very real life ramifications. All you have to do is look to the Oval. The man in charge, the commander in chief, is sympathetic to one of our, if not our primary enemy. It beggars belief. How do we push back on this, Slavi? You're over there. I'm doing what I can from here. What can we do over there? What can, not only, obviously you're dedicated, but how can we get folks who watch on the edge and our audience to understand just how very real and dangerous this is?
It's super dangerous. And I've actually been saying and have been doing videos about how dangerous propaganda is. I know a lot of people like, oh, like here. No, propaganda takes lives.
Yeah, it's a bunch of Facebook posts, to quote, to paraphrase the Vice President of the United States.
Yeah, hey, propaganda literally
It's
kills.
not just Facebook posts. Yeah.
No, it's so much more, especially when you're dealing with Russia that have been masters at propaganda since the Soviet Union, pretty much, and now they have money to do it. So how do we fight back? I think we kind of need to take a page out of their playbook a bit. They're paying influencers, right-wing influencers here. I think there should be more democratic influencers. I think there should be more pro-Ukrainian influencers. I think it should be made cool again. I think that would help greatly, because that's how the Russian narratives, Russian propaganda spread to Americans, was through social media and through YouTubers, right-wing guys, and like Tenet Media, all those people. So we got to do it. And
they haven't even. Well, sadly, now with the chief executive coming out with this kind of stuff, even the guys who were kind of ashamed by the revealing of Tenet Media and these kind of information campaigns, the warfare campaigns, they kind of had to shut up for a bit. But now that the president of the United States has come out with this, and the vice president of the United States have come out with this kind of stuff, they're going to be emboldened again. How worried are you that this is going to be disproportional, and that Moscow, using these guys, these useful idiots, or these fellow travelers in the United States, they're just going to make it worse? What are your concerns about that?
It's been so unfair for quite a while, so I'm personally used to it. So I'm more like, what do I need to do to push back? What kind of videos do I need to make? What kind of things is Zelensky pushing that we need to push more over here? So I don't think I'm really afraid of this at this point. It's just numbness to it.
Yeah, and what else can we do, right? But just get up every day and try to do a little bit of something. Now, as a member, you've been over in the West for quite some time. You got out of Ukraine kind of in those dark days when there was no future here economically, and it was best to head on out. And you've had a lovely career as a ballet dancer and a model and an actress and all the rest of it. So you're not part of the recent wave of the diaspora, but I want to ask you, as a member of the Ukrainian diaspora and as somebody who is fighting this propaganda fight and recognizing that there's a real life death toll to this, how is it for you to be watching your native Kharkiv get hit daily and the destruction out in the east of the country? And you're so far away, but of course your heart's always going to be here as a Ukrainian. How's it been to be part of the diaspora and watch the real life toll of this propaganda campaign and all the rest of it when it comes to your fellow citizens?
It's been extremely heartbreaking and just absolutely brutal. But what helps me and gives me hope, a lot of inspiration, is the people of Kharkiv. They're such heroes. And I mean, I have family there, old relatives.
Really are.
And when I talk to them, how are you? And they're like, yeah, we're fine. Just had 200 meters, missile just hit, but we're fine. We're going for a walk now. I'm like,
That's
this
Kharkiv.
isn't normal.
That's Kharkiv. I mean, it's everywhere in Ukraine, but that's particularly hard. I mean, we were talking about the characteristics of Angelinos. There's something about the character of what we would call them, Kharkivans. I don't know, but regardless, they're just like the steel in which they work. They do not bend. They are tough people.
It's incredible, and it gives me so much energy and hope, because when I see them in such a terrible position, I'm like, I have no excuses. I don't. So,
is there a bit of guilt there? Is there a little bit of survivor's guilt there that you're comfortable over there? I mean, even with the fires, you're relatively comfortable in the West. Is there any? Do you? I mean, look. It's a very normal human reaction. I've seen survivor's guilt in lots of things in all the wars that I've covered. Why I'm safe, and who am I to speak about X, Y, or Z, or to feel this way or that way? Do you have any? Do you think some of that is the motivation, the emotions that you're feeling watching, is the guilt of like I'm safe?
There is that component for sure. But I think with me, because I did leave early on, there's more of that. I'm Ukrainian. This is my culture. These are my people, and I need to do everything that I can. Whereas for refugees, for the wave of the refugees that came actually after 2014, I think with them there's more of a survivor's guilt, but. At least the ones that I talked to. But there's still a component of that there. And I'm definitely aware of it, but it's a little different this way. So.
Well, nobody should give you any grief about being safe. But look, I mean, do you think the Ukrainian community that does exist? I mean, I know you spent some time in Canada. There's a large Ukrainian community in Canada, and so there's solidarity there. There's community there. And, of course, if you fly into Chicago, one of my favorite places in the United States, and does have little Ukraine down there, one of the best Ukrainian restaurants I've encountered outside of Ukraine is in Chicago. But do you feel this sense of unity with the Ukrainian diaspora? How unified is the diaspora?
Super unified. I mean, here in Los Angeles, there's numerous of organizations that do numerous of things, and everyone is close. And I mean, when the fires happened, it's not just Ukrainians helping Ukrainians or fundraising for the war. When the fires happened, Ukrainians were the first ones that were there giving out borscht or chebureki to the victims or firefighters.
Yes, that was. I remember seeing you covering it.
Swept through parts of Los Angeles County, displacing families and threatening homes. Fueled by dry conditions and strong winds, the fire has left behind destruction and heartbreak, but also stories of resilience and solidarity. Near the recent fire.
Come on over. The Ukrainian community is here to serve and here to give back.
The Stand With Ukraine Foundation is stepping in to provide borscht, a traditional Ukrainian soup, to firefighters and those affected by the wildfire. The Ukrainian community, no stranger to tragedy, understands the strength it takes to heal and rebuild. In times of hardship, we stand together. From Ukraine to Los Angeles, we stand united with our community, proving that resilience, hope, and compassion will always overcome. Together, we rise from the ashes and rebuild. Slava, Los Angeles.
The guys out there on, I guess it was Santa Monica Pier with the Ukrainian flag. And what tickled me to no end is the fact that they called them Ukrainian empanadas. And really, they were just chipureki.
You saw that. We were.
The Crimean. Yeah, that made me laugh so much because I saw it. And it was beautiful, actually. It really did touch my heart that Ukrainians were doing that for their fellow Angelenos and representing Ukraine in that time of need. But it also gave me a good laugh to see that they were calling them Ukrainian empanadas. For those who don't know, a chiburek is a primarily Crimean dish. It is kind of like a folded over, like a calzone sort of thing. It's usually deep fried with some meat and lovely. Oh yes, ooh, very, very, very tasty. If you get a chance to try them out, but yeah, I was very proud of the diaspora to see that during the fires, and of course I'm always happy to see the solidarity of the Ukrainian community in the West.
And
But do you
there's
think?
almost every weekend we have events and rallies going on. I mean, this weekend is going to be huge. It's going to be the third anniversary, and it's going to be a huge media day, and a lot of people show up for it. And also, what in the community that we do is take in refugees, or when we could before Trump got into the office and changed the immigration policy, is we sponsor Ukrainian refugees. So that was a big thing that I know a lot of people did in the Los Angeles Ukrainian community.
Yeah, well, that's lovely, and I sigh deeply because I know that it's going to become harder and harder. Because now it's a domestic political issue. And anyhow, yeah, that's bittersweet to me. That's very, very bittersweet to me. Do you think that the ones who left in the current wave, say post 2014, but certainly post full scale invasion, do you think that they will return if and when? Well, eventually win, because all wars end. But when the war ends one way or the other, do you think that the diaspora, that maybe that this current wave, will they return? Or do you think they'll, because the longer this goes on, they set roots and their lives are now in the West? Are you worried, basically, I guess what I'm asking is, are you worried about the kind of the drain of Ukrainians from their native land?
I think most will have to return if they came here on a refugee status. But if I think there's a lot of Ukrainians because do have education, high education, and for the most part, they do get great jobs and get sponsorships from workplaces. And I don't think they'll return.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that too.
Yeah.
And once they're over the language barrier, which, it's only just you can get past that.
But at the same time, I think Ukraine is going to be
talented.
I think Ukraine is going to be thriving after the war. It's going to be a hotspot. I think Europe as a whole will be a hotspot, and not so much United States. So there might be a huge change there that a lot of not just Americans, but will be going over to that continent. So, and Ukraine will be a hotspot for tech, for drones. There's going to be a lot of opportunities there. I'm one of those people that actually wants to go back to Ukraine. I want to shoot there. I have a lot of projects that I really want to get to. So I think Ukraine will truly be a thriving place. So,
well, and certainly it'll depend on a scale of how enticing it is to come back, depending on how the whole war, ends up and the result of the war. There's going to be, I think, and I don't know if you'd like to respond to this, or we can move on. I think there will be a draw here. I think there will be this will actually that the recovery and the rebuilding will be part of a renaissance in Ukraine that will be appealing to many in the diaspora to return to. But of course, it does depend on how the final thing, is resolved. I don't know if you want to respond to that, or we can move on to another question. It's up to you. This is a discussion after all.
I don't think that there's at least for any Ukrainian here, that Russia ends up winning. Ukraine already won.
No.
Just a matter of when and how it happens. But it's such evil cannot win. Genocidal wars are not to be won. So it's one way or another, Ukraine won, and yeah.
Well, yeah, Ukraine is going. There's going to be a country called Ukraine. It's going to be independent. It's going to be sovereign, with Kiev as its capital, and with access to the Black Sea, and and by default, at least shared dominion of the Black Sea, because Odessa will be Ukrainian now and forever. So I agree with you there. The other bit of news, aside from the insanity of the week that was, as we are recording this on Thursday the 20th, but it will air the day before the 24th. This will be coming out as we always put out our episodes, Sundays at 10 p.m. Kiev time, 6 p.m. London, and 10 a.m. Pacific. Shameless plug. But this will be broadcast, put out there, published the day before the 3-year anniversary. Looking back on those grim days 3 years ago, how do you reflect on February 24th, 2022? What was it like for you?
Foggy, I'd have to say. I was in denial that could happen. And then it happened, and thank God I was surrounded by people who were doing news, on the ground news, having conversations, what was going to happen. And I was surrounded by people that rallied with me, with Ukrainians. And so I got very, very lucky there. But it was a fog. That's...
Very emotional.
I don't know how else to describe it. It was unreal that it was happening for the longest time. And I think to this day, I'm trying to figure out how or why the Russians hate us so much. That's the question that I don't know. It's unfathomable almost that such evil exists, and for what?
Yeah.
So
for their empire.
Yeah, understandable.
But as it's your birthday and we kind of joke around by this, they shouldn't have messed, because all Ukrainian women are witches and all Ukrainian men are Cossacks, and you don't want to mess with either.
That's great.
What do you think is going to happen moving forward? We talk about the 3-year anniversary, but it also gives us a moment to look ahead. And obviously, given the last week, what are your thoughts on where this conflict goes from here?
If anyone can predict this, please let me know, because you can see the future. At this point, it's so unpredictable. I mean, it obviously went extremely to unexpected places because of Trump. Is America done as a superpower? I think so. I think it's time to accept it. At the same time, I don't know if you guys are getting the coverage, but there are rallies against Trump, and they're growing every day in major cities here in the United States. Ukrainians are coming out on Saturday or throughout the weekend, and the crowds are growing stronger here to go stand against this. I think I can say regime now at this point.
How much of that do you think is Ukraine contributing to that? Because I know a lot of Americans sympathize and understand, even in their own special American way. How much of the protests against, and do you think they will grow because of what's just happened with him throwing his lot in with Putin?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for the most part, Americans have a good head on their shoulders. They understand what's good, what's bad, killing people bad. So, and the implications of being allies with Russia, I mean, America has been, you know, sworn enemies for since ever and up until now. So for Americans, the ones that are not MAGA brainwashed, this is unfathomable. This is unreal, and I think a lot of people are Americans are starting to realize that this is it cannot happen because their freedom is literally in Americans' blood, just like in Ukrainian blood, in our DNA. So and Americans will march for it, will do everything to go against such a, I don't know, dictatorships. Can we say at this point? And
Yeah.
yeah, and Russia is clearly
Well, I wonder. No, sorry. Russia is clearly.
playing Putin, or sorry, playing Trump. Russia
Oh.
is playing Trump. So that's not gonna end up anywhere. China is already looking at United States, getting cozy in the number one spot where they wanted to be for a while. So I don't think America can survive with this kind of leadership for very much longer, and people can see it, and that's going to have to change.
Well, and I wonder if I mean, the ideological differences. You left Ukraine. You say democracy and freedom is in the heart of every Ukrainian. I do agree with you there, but I'm going to differ with you slightly in that I think it was dormant before 2014, and the Revolution of Dignity really changed a lot of people's mentality here. They really finally started to throw off the Soviet Russian Empire being a colonized country, and they found their voice in 2014. And there's a reason why I put at the end of every episode that quote by Abraham Lincoln, which I think does distinguish our two different worldviews, in that the Russians really don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in things like inalienable rights. It's not something they. And so I say you understand that coming from a country that was colonized by Russia. How can we get the message? Because I'm not even going to ask you, do you think Americans understand this ideological difference? Maybe some do in a kind of, a subconscious way. But how do we get the message out that this isn't just about geopolitical strength? There's an ideological difference, and the cynicism of the Russian way of life and the Muscovites is something that we shouldn't bow to because we love liberty in America. Even when it doesn't work. How do we get that message out? And do you think that message would find traction?
Unfortunately, they're going to have to experience it at this point because we tried so many different ways to communicate that, and it's not getting through to them, and they're just going to have to feel what it's like to not have freedom, and understand the ideologies that Russians have, because we're very close to it. I mean, more and more, actually, the more people I talk to from Ukraine, were saying that America is starting to look a lot like Russia.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. How have the ripple effects been in the diaspora, in the Ukrainian community, to this betrayal, basically? And there's I can't think of a better word. This betrayal by Trump's America, where previously America was very sympathetic to Ukraine and supportive of Ukraine, and that's going to change. Not that it hasn't been kind of dripping away. But how's the ripple effect been within the community to know to feel this betrayal?
It's awful. I think everyone is just in state of shock, in fear, because every day is just so much worse than the other. So and nobody can predict what's going to happen at this point. It's just such a wild ride, and my thing was to keep calm and to kind of analyze things, and negotiations didn't start yet. That's what I said. I mean, it's just a lot of talking, a lot of disinformation, a lot of shady talking, and but we also have a lot of faith in Zelensky and Ukrainian government, because at the end of the day, it's Ukraine that makes those choices, not America.
And the armed forces, of Ukraine.
Absolutely.
Trust in the ZSU. Trust in
Yes.
the ZSU. Those guys, those men and women are heroes. Every single one of them. They're the shield that's defending all of Europe and Western civilization, even though they seem to have snuck in through the back door in the United States. I mean, it's the betrayal and all the rest of it to the Ukrainian community obviously is going to be tough to swallow. I wonder, do you think it's irreparable? Do you think if in some way, shape, or form things could be maneuvered to some sort of negotiated settlement here, good, bad, or the other way? I don't care who does it. Will Ukrainians forgive Americans this abandonment of their promises? Can it be forgiven?
I think we're at a point that they can be forgiven, for sure, because they have helped us a lot, and there's a lot of good people here, and we shouldn't kind of judge it from the current leadership. But I think at this point, for now, it can be forgiven, and I think relations can be restored between Ukraine and United States. If this keeps going and increasing this hostility, I don't think so.
Yeah, this is my concern as well, and something I've said for a very, very long time, is that what Americans and Europeans need to understand is that with or without their support, Ukrainians are going to resist. They're going to fight. And the choice really isn't, how to stop the fighting or, how to stop the killing. The best way is through victory, because Ukrainians will not stop fighting. So the question isn't, how to stop the killing. It's how much support do we give and don't give, which will result in the number of Ukrainians that have to die. And I guess that leads me to the question of, will the West just sit and watch because if Ukrainians don't give up, more Ukrainians are going to die. If we don't have the Patriot missiles that protect our skies, missiles will rain down on every city in the country, but the will only strengthen, I believe. Although lots of folks here, I have to admit, are getting exhausted.
I think
will the West just sit by now and watch?
Europe surely won't. I think this has definitely finally lit a fire under their ass, for sure. They're finally moving and hopefully getting stuff done. And I don't think they will let Ukraine fall just like that without a fight. So for America, it's obviously hard to say, but Europe, they're next. If Ukraine falls, they're next. So I don't think they're going to let Ukraine fall. And there's literally
no, I don't
plans.
think the Europeans will.
There's intel that Russia is going to Belarus to invade through Belarus, which means they're going to go into Poland, and that's obviously NATO
The
countries,
Baltics
and
are,
yeah,
of course,
Baltics.
right on the menu.
So they don't have much choice, really. And Eastern European countries know that. Western Europe finally waking up, like Macron, and UK, not EU, but on the continent, UK has definitely been very vocal with putting peacekeepers on the ground, even though there needs to be peace for peacekeepers to come in.
Yeah.
So, and I really hope that Zelensky's idea of doing European armed forces is eventually will come to fruition. I think it's very much needed.
Is Zelensky still very popular in the diaspora? Oh, yeah, I know he's certainly not 4%, as the fool in the Oval would have us believe that it's 4% support. I think it's slightly more than that. How is the support for Zelensky in the diaspora?
Everybody loves him here, maybe more than Ukrainians in Ukraine. Very super supportive.
That's probably right.
Yeah, it's such a charisma. He's a hero. Never heard not one bad thing about Zelensky he's a hero to us here. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, but obviously, all Ukrainians know very well that the second the war is over, that there will be internal domestic squabbles, because that's the nature of a democracy, and Ukrainians have a democracy.
There's a funny meme that came out, and it's so true because it's an anecdote that, domestic politics, all Ukrainians are, fighting with each other around. And then, that happened with Trump. And then all Ukrainians are in formation, ready to,
defend Zelensky.
Yeah, the unity is absolutely incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me laugh that it's like, contrary to what I think maybe Vladimir Putin wanted to use his orange puppet to do, it's been counterproductive, because most Ukrainians that I know are like, well, I have my problems with Zelensky, but he's our Zelensky. Don't mess. That's stuff. There's something to be said of Ukrainian unity. It's been humbling to watch this entire conflict.
It for sure backfired on Trump, especially because Zelensky is liked by Americans more than Trump at this point.
I think that's probably right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but certainly there are his MAGA crowd. And, the fact that he put out this narrative that because Zelensky has not held an election, which, by the way, just to state a fact, it is illegal to have an election while martial law is in effect, which was democratically voted upon by the Rada, the Ukrainian parliament. So let's put that to bed. But how do you, living in the United States, get out the word that no, Ukraine is a democracy, and that's a lie? What are you doing to push, and the diaspora, I suppose, as a whole, doing to push back on this whole anti-democratic dictator Zelensky messaging?
I mean, we do it as anybody else. Just have to. It's very repetitive and makes me very angry. But at least for the close people that I know, that would sometimes would be like, "Hey, is Zelensky really a dictator?" And I have to say, well, Ukrainians, and Ukrainians wouldn't stand for somebody that they don't want as their leader. Ukrainians are probably most democratic people. If Ukrainians wouldn't want Zelensky, they would get rid of him. As simple as that. He would not be speaking for the Ukrainian people at wartime. So,
yeah, it's something I keep trying to put out as much as I possibly can, is this idea that Ukraine is not Zelensky, and Zelensky is not Ukraine. He serves as president at the pleasure of the Ukrainian people. And the second they don't want him, they'll get rid of him. And frankly, I think he'll be eventually, when the time comes, he'll be perfectly happy to step down. Must have been exhausting for him.
I mean, even his party is servant of the people. His show, servant of the people. It's his brand. Literally, it's a brand that he ran on.
Yeah, and let's. One day this war will end, and again, I agree with you in I think inevitable Ukrainian victory. The only question is how many more Ukrainians, sadly, will have to die, and Russian soldiers, which I don't care about particularly, but certainly Ukrainians I care about, and the suffering that I see all around me here. And I'm glad you're not here. Stay safe in L.A. Stay away from those fires. Let's hope that your next birthday, what is it, 22 you'll be next year? Is it 20, something
23.
like that? I'm sure. Well, let's hope that your next birthday will be back in Kharkiv and you can have some, I don't know, honey cake or something. Is there anything else you will, before we finish off here? We're so happy to have you on. You're always a lovely voice for Ukraine, and for that we are thankful. And I just want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything you'd like to plug, or anything you'd like to say in retrospect to our audience about things in Ukraine, and any parting thoughts?
This is a tough one, given the current climate and shameful actions of the American government. I would probably just want to say, guys, don't stare at the news. You can look, but don't stare, because it's gonna drive you absolutely insane. And Ukrainians out here, Ukrainian diaspora, are doing everything that we can to make sure that you get everything that Ukrainians need in Ukraine, truly. And that's all I can say for now. I again, like, predicting the future, or even tomorrow, or even what happens in the morning, is absolutely insane. And just to stay calm and analyze stuff, because a lot of it doesn't make sense when it just hits you in the face. And for the love of God, stop reading those headlines, because the headlines ruin everything. They're just absolutely insane and too much. So yeah, I think I'd like to leave it as that.
Yeah, well, as a former member of the media, I can only but apologize to you, because I think they have done a really shitty job here. So we'll keep doing the best we can. We'll get up in the morning and we'll keep getting that message out. I know you will. I know all of us here at On the Edge will. And there are a whole bunch of folks that you and I both know that will continue to do our best to do it. But I appreciate you, and I appreciate your efforts, and you are a wonderful person to talk to try and explain this wonderful, wonderful country. You've been a great ambassador for that. So, Slavi, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor, honestly. I was so shocked when you invited me. I'm like, yes, I'll come.
Oh, of course, of course, of course. All right. We'll talk to you soon, and thanks very much for watching.